Reports out of Syria say 2 people have been killed and over 24 others wounded in various attacks by anti-government armed groups. This despite a ceasefire announced early Thursday. Local media say an army officer was killed and 24 people wounded in an explosive device blast targeting a military bus in Aleppo. A similar explosion wounded a number of law enforcement members in Idlib. Earlier, a local government official was assassinated in Daraa. The Syrian media blame all attacks on armed terrorist groups. The attacks come despite a ceasefire brokered by the UN Arab League envoy Kofi Annan. The Syrian government is yet to comment on the attacks, but it has said in the past that it reserves the right to respond in kind to any possible attack by armed groups. Earlier, Russia, China and Britain reacted to the ceasefire in Syria. The Russian foreign minister called for more time for Annan's peace plan to work. China has welcomed the ceasefire, and Britain has slammed the initiative as frustrating.
Calm makes a tentative return to Syria. Reports coming out of the country suggest that a ceasefire brokered by the UN Arab League envoy Kofi Annan is holding, with no major violations from the government forces and the armed groups. The ceasefire came into effect early on Thursday. The foreign-backed opposition has confirmed that the situation is calm across Syria.
Till this moment, the Syrian regime abide the ceasefire started today at 6 a.m. Local time, and there is no major violence reports.
Damascus has, however, warned it will return fire if attacked by the armed groups. Meanwhile, the truce has drawn reactions from the veto-holding members of the UN Security Council, Russia, China and Britain. Russia's foreign minister has called for time for Annan's peace plan to work. Sergei Lavrov criticized some Arab and Western states for dismissing the peace plan as a failure even before it went into effect. He called on the Arab and Western countries to use their influence with the armed groups to avoid future unrest. China also welcomed the ceasefire in Syria, urging the armed groups to honor the truce.
It's an important step that Syria has taken towards political resolution, and it's a sign that Annan's mediation efforts has achieved important progress. China also hopes all sides in Syria to immediately cease fire and implement Annan's 6-point proposal.
However, the British Prime Minister has openly criticized the Annan peace plan. David Cameron expressed, quote, immense frustration over global support for the peace plan. Cameron called for tightening of the noose on Damascus. Parts of Syria have been ravaged by a year-long unrest. The Syrian opposition blames the unrest on Damascus, but the government says what it calls terrorists funded and armed by foreign countries.